This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
U.S. President Joe Biden sending special envoy to Ethiopia over the conflict in Tigray. Algeria battles wildfires as 22 suspected arsonists are arrested. And experts warn of a migrant crisis as Taliban gains trigger an exodus of Afghan citizens. Hello, welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi, and for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. A look at how the closure of ivory markets in China, the U.S., and the UK have impacted elephant numbers in Kenya. And in sports, Gabonese international Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's absence felt as Arsenal goes down in England. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Great to have you along with me for this hour. Let's start in the United States, where the country has joined calls for an end to fighting in Ethiopia's Tigray region. President Joe Biden is sending the U.S. Horn of Africa Special Envoy to Ethiopia. Jeffrey Feltman will be charged with helping efforts to stop the fighting. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has yet to release an official statement regarding the visit. Feltman will also visit Djibouti and the UAE over a 10-day trip. All right, let's get more on this. CGTN's Gurum Chala joins us live from Addis Ababa for more on this. Gurum Chala, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Gurum, how is the Ethiopian government reacting to the news of the U.S. sending the special envoy to talk about the conflict in Tigray? Gurum?
Richard, David Feltman, Jeffrey David Feltman, Special Envoy for President Biden, is expected here in Addis Ababa, perhaps in the beginning of the week, and he is mandated by the president to try and find a way of concluding the Ethiopian conflict in the north peacefully. He's been here once before to try the same mission, but by that time he made the prime minister, he made the foreign minister, and other stakeholders, and he went back and suggested that the Ethiopian conflict should be concluded peacefully, and his efforts by then were not successful. Now his return is highly expected as well, as the U.S. is an important ally to Ethiopia. The Ethiopian government also values his mission to Addis Ababa and wants to cooperate with him. According to the information we have, Feltman, by the way, is an experienced diplomat in the Eastern Africa region, in the Horn of Africa region in general terms. So in his mission, we have also heard that he will be in Djibouti, and he will be also visiting the United Arab Emirates, also Addis Ababa here. So he is highly expected here in Ethiopia, so that Ethiopian authorities can also share their thoughts about the ongoing conflict in the north.
Well, Gurum, the reports indicate the fighting in northern Tigray could escalate to other nearby regions. What's the situation really like on the ground?
Well, the situation on the ground, by the way, is escalating by the day. As you know, the conflict has already came out of the Tigray regional state and is being...
Well, unfortunately, we lost Gurum Chala. We apologize for that break in communication. Let's move on, though, to Algeria, where 22 people have been arrested as suspected arsonists of wildfires that have been raging in the country since Monday. Authorities say some of the fires were caused by high temperatures. However, criminal activity has been blamed for most of them. Now, dozens of forest fires have hit mountainous areas in northern Algeria, leaving at least 65 dead. 28 soldiers are among the dead, as the army was deployed to assist firefighters. The worst hit province is Tizi Ouzou of the Kabylie region east of the capital, Algiers. Algerian authorities have struggled to contain the fires, which have since spread to several other provinces.
We're really upset. I can't believe we're really talking to you and we're alive. Given the situation we've been through, it's really a tragedy. It's a situation I've never experienced in my life.
It was a fire like never seen before. The fire wasn't moving slowly. It was gusting. We couldn't even stay in front. We were immediately asphyxiated.
All right, let's go to Algiers now. We have Professor Laïd Zaglami from the Algiers University Faculty of Information and Communication joining us live via Zoom from there. Professor, welcome to Africa Live. We appreciate your company. Now, reports indicate, Professor, most of the wildfires are dying down, but some are not happy with the efforts to combat the fires. What's the latest from where you are, Professor?
Good morning. Thank you very much, Richard, for having me on the show. So far, so good. Although, as you mentioned in your reportage, that over 70 wildfires took place within 14 provinces, and today, as I am speaking, there are only a couple of fires that's still burning. But overall, the death toll was raised to 69 deaths, and of course, thousands of hectares were destroyed. It's clear that the main region of Kabylia was hit by this criminal act that what the government, the president described, and mainly Tizi Ouzou and the Bijaya provinces. Tizi Ouzou is about 100 kilometers east of the capital of Algiers. And of course, efforts to combat this fire were not fruitful for the only reason it happened at the same time and within equal distance. That is to say, the intensity and the multiplicity of them make it difficult for the fireman to cope with. More importantly, as you have mentioned, the government blamed some arsonists. More than that, they qualify them as criminal because they have been acting and by using chemical product to spread the fire. And today, as I speak to you, the weather is still hot, around 40 degrees, but forecast weather is about to get mild by tomorrow or the day after. But of course, we cannot blame the weather or the global warming for that. No, this is a criminal act, and a picture from the agency, the Algerian Agency of Satellite, has clearly mentioned that that acts are quite premeditated, and the president himself of the Algerian government, of the Algerian Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, blamed one of the movement of the independentists in Kabylia, movement of independence in Kabylia, as well as Islamist movement based in UK. Those are in the eyes of the government, they are behind the investigation of this wildfire.
Well, indeed, unfortunately, it seems we are witnessing there. Professor Laïd Zaglami, thank you for the very latest from Algiers. Let's turn our attention now to the Afghan crisis. An Afghan official says the Taliban have launched a multi-pronged assault on Mazar-e-Sharif, a major city in northern Afghanistan defended by powerful warlords. The Taliban completed their sweep of Afghanistan south on Friday, taking 4 more provincial capitals and getting closer to the country's capital, Kabul. Over the past week, the group has been making rapid gains in urban regions. At least 18 provincial capitals have fallen to the Taliban forces, including the country's second and third largest cities. And that's half of Afghanistan's 34 provincial capitals. And the group has control of more than 2/3 of the country. Zamariyalai Abbasin has more in Kabul.
The situation is getting worse every day, and Taliban get more control of the country. Eastern part of the country was much secure, and there were no offensives since last 1 month, but we are getting reports from the eastern parts of the country that the Taliban have besieged and start attacks on the eastern parts of the country. Kunar almost fell to the Taliban. Nangarhar province, which was much secure nowadays, also came under the attacks of Taliban from several sides, and many districts are now witnessing heavy clashes between NDSF and the Taliban forces. At the same time, the neighboring central province, Maidan Wardak, which is located just close to the Kabul, is also under control. Last night, a couple of attacks took place by the Taliban, and many of the checkpoints were captured by the Taliban. While in Khost, Paktia, Paktika, there are still clashes continue. Several districts became under Taliban control, and the KPFR campaign forces, which are trained by the CIA, and they are called paramilitary forces and pro-government forces, they are also in heavy clashes with the Taliban in Paktia and Khost provinces. And at the same time, all the gates of Kabul are getting tightened as the neighboring capital provinces to Kabul are under heavy clashes of the Taliban. So every hour the situation is again changing in the country.
Well, U.S. officials say the first group of American troops have arrived in the Afghan capital, Kabul, to help evacuate embassy personnel and other civilians. The Pentagon said Friday Kabul does not face an imminent threat, despite sudden territorial gains by the Taliban across the country. But several other NATO member countries, including Britain and Canada, are also evacuating their nationals. Owen Fairclough has the details. Let's take a look.
Taliban forces seizing control of Afghanistan's second biggest city, Kandahar, in Helmand province. 7 years ago, American and British forces lowered their flags as they ended combat operations there. Now, along with Canada, they're sending soldiers back to help their embassy's staff leave the country. Few crises could distract the Biden administration from a resurgent COVID-19 right now, but the speed of the Taliban's advance since the US announced it would withdraw all forces by the end of this month has caught Washington on the back foot. Now it has to contend with the optics of sending 3,000 troops back to Afghanistan to safeguard what the State Department is refusing to call an evacuation, a move now drawing comparisons with the fall of Saigon towards the end of the Vietnam War. The State Department is refusing to say if the US embassy would close as the Taliban, which rules using a hardline interpretation of Sharia law, closes in on Afghanistan's capital, Kabul.
This is not abandonment. This is not an evacuation. This is not the wholesale withdrawal. What this is a reduction in the size of our civilian footprint.
Yet with Taliban forces now controlling at least 2/3 of the country and even penetrating Iran's borders, the United Nations fears a humanitarian catastrophe is about to unfold.
Without a significant de-escalation in violence, Afghanistan is on course to witness the highest ever number of documented civilian casualties in a single year since the UN records began. We are particularly worried about the impact of the conflict on women and girls.
Peace talks between Afghanistan's Western-backed government and the Taliban have been stalled, but international envoys to those negotiations are urging both sides to accelerate them while de-escalating violence. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Hundreds of displaced people in Somalia's Shadur district, northwest of the capital Mogadishu, are in dire need of humanitarian assistance. The Al-Shabaab terror group has controlled Shadur and neighboring towns in Bakul region for the last 7 years, cutting off road access for aid to vulnerable populations. CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy reports.
This is Madakswara, the internally displaced people's settlement in Hudur district. Many displaced families who depend on humanitarian assistance have been left helpless. Displaced 80-year-old mother of 5, Fatuma Nisho, does not know where her next meal will come from.
We have not cooked for the last 4 days because we have no food to eat. We are starving. We badly need to be supported.
Fatuma's situation is compounded by an aid blockade by the Al-Shabaab militant group. Climate-related shocks have also worsened the humanitarian situation in the country.
Gaps still exist and people are still coming because of they're being displaced by conflict and they're being displaced by drought.
The 2021 Humanitarian Response Plan for Somalia seeks $1.1 billion to provide life-saving assistance. but only $432 million of the required funding is available, the lowest in 6 years. A delegation on a humanitarian assessment mission visited Hudur to establish the situation on the ground. Somalia has one of the highest numbers of displaced people in the world. Some 2.9 million people, nearly 25% of the population, are displaced. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
The news continues on Africa Live. We'll see you on the other side of the break with more news stories. Here's what's ahead. Africa hoping for a major COVID-19 vaccine boost as manufacturing gathers pace in South Africa. And a taste of Kenya's Masai Mara Game Reserve, one of the world's best wildlife tourism destinations.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. 4 African countries are now reporting entering the 4th wave of coronavirus infections. The highly contagious Delta variant is said to be dominant. According to the Africa Centers for Disease Control, the continent is experiencing a rise in infections for the 4th time since the pandemic began. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moi reports.
Over 7.1 million COVID-19 cases have so far been reported in Africa, representing 3.5% of total cases globally. According to the Africa Centers for Disease Control, 31 African countries are reporting test positivity rates that are higher than 12%.
We continue to see a cumulative high rate of positivity rate of 11.5%. with a test per case ratio of 8.7%. 11.5% represents a very high rate of positivity. It means extensive community spread.
The high positivity rate in Africa is attributed to the dominant Delta variant, now reported in 30 countries.
4 countries, Algeria, Kenya, Somalia, and Tunisia, are now experiencing a 4th wave. So again, it just speaks to how things will continue to unfold unless we scale up vaccines.
Africa remains far from reaching its target of inoculating at least 60% of its population by the end of next year. The continent requires 1.6 billion vaccine doses to meet this target. Only 77 million vaccine doses have been administered across Africa, representing just 1.75% of coverage. The Africa CDC says it's continuing to support member states to roll out vaccination campaigns as part of efforts to contain the spread of the virus. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
On the vaccine front, until July, Africa had been importing all of its COVID vaccines. However, that's set to change as a manufacturing facility in South Africa begins shipping its first doses of COVID-19 vaccines to the African Union. Here is CGTN's Angela Coppola with the details.
Continental pharmaceutical companies have been actively seeking partnerships with global companies to get involved in vaccine production. BioVac in South Africa has just finalized a deal with Pfizer and BioNTech.
So between now and the end of the year, we'll be doing some modification on our current facilities, and this will be to enable us to absorb the technology which will start in early 2022. And so the first half of 2022 will be dedicated towards the actual tech transfer with the aim of submitting to a regulator, in our case being SAPRA, by the end of Q2 2022. So we are forecasting that the production should be starting in the second half of 2022.
Others are taking a different route. Aspen has just started negotiations with Johnson & Johnson to get a license to manufacture their COVID vaccine in South Africa.
This would mean that Aspen, at that point in time, would acquire its own intellectual property, would be able to produce its own version of the Johnson & Johnson product. Of course, what this will do is it will increase the independence and autonomy, the security of supply on the continent, because now you are not only in control of the manufacturing of the product, but also where the product gets allocated and distributed.
One of the unresolved issues is the waiving of intellectual property rights by big pharmaceutical companies to produce the vaccine.
And so for us, there is sharing of knowledge and know-how. Obviously, we don't own the product at the end of the day. It's a Pfizer product. And so for us, we're seeing these debates on IP, but our arrangement is really based on a bilateral arrangement that's based on a legal agreement and really mainly based on trust and sharing of information.
The drive to identify and create continental vaccine production facilities is due to the imbalance of distribution between the developed and developing nations.
Basically, those countries that had fully fledged manufacture were at the front of the queue. Those that had very little or no manufacturing capability found themselves at the back of the queue. Now, we cannot sustain it any longer.
Having the vaccine manufactured on the continent is important because it allows for the authorities to distribute the vaccine where it's needed most, as quickly as possible. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
For decades, China has been working with African nations to expand and equip healthcare facilities. Since 2011, the Sino-Guinean Friendship Hospital has stood as a testament of this. Now, a newly constructed laboratory in Conakry hopes to increase the services available to patients.
The newly constructed laboratory at the Sino-Guinean Friendship Hospital in Conakry looks to expand the services available. From cardiac catheterization to high-performance imaging rays, the reference hospital will be able to serve a wider range of patients.
This laboratory comes at the right time to allow us not only to update ourselves in regard with this microsurgery, but also to maintain what we have already acquired. This medical equipment will also allow the training of future generations. We doctors who were first in the field have not benefited from this latest generation of equipment.
Doctors will now also have a chance to receive training in the use of microsurgery. Chinese medical experts are on hand to assist with the training.
Microsurgery is a more advanced technique in the world. Guinean doctors must use it and learn the techniques. There will be a lot of work to be done, but we will work hand in hand to satisfy the Guinean people.
The Sino-Guinean Friendship Hospital has been serving patients for over a decade. Dr. Soare hopes the latest advancements will continue to not only support patients but help young doctors improve their skills. Asatal, CGTN.
Let's now turn our attention to extreme weather phenomena. In Tunisia, the National Institute of Meteorology says 6 Tunisian cities have been ranked as the hottest cities in Africa. This follows record temperatures there, and authorities say that the economic activities in the country have been affected by the recent heat waves. Reporting from Tunis, here is Adnan Shawashi.
Ayad Al-Leben is a renowned Tunisian climate change consultant. The former expert at the National Institute of Meteorology in Tunis says the current maximum temperatures recorded in the North African state are very alarming.
We've recently observed an unprecedented heatwave. It reminds us of the last heatwave of 1982, but this week's phenomenon is unique and very alarming. It's one of the few times that temperatures in the north of Tunisia are much higher than temperatures in the center and the south of the country. This is a real abnormality because temperatures are naturally cooler in the north.
The streets of many cities were largely deserted throughout the day. 6 Tunisian cities, namely Beja, Bizerte, Tunis Carthage, Jendouba, Tbarqa and Kirwan, topped rankings of the hottest cities in Africa. Many people were unable to come out of their homes or to go to work due to the scorching heat, as temperatures reached 48 degrees Celsius.
I can't stay at home the whole day. I am trying to adapt to this heat by practicing sports very early in the morning or late in the evening when the temperatures are cooler. We should all take care of our children and elderly people because this weather is dangerous. They need to stay hydrated and protected while avoiding the sun.
As an old man, I'm suffering in such hot weather. I think the new generations will have to get used to it because Tunisia is getting warmer.
Experts say that hot weather has driven up energy demands across Tunisia. The national electricity company STEC announced that tens of thousands of power cuts were reported nationwide. Consequently, thousands of businesses were affected by the power outages.
People avoid shopping in this extreme weather. In addition, power outages have caused considerable losses for businesses. The computers, air conditioners, and all electrical equipment are now not working.
The city of Khartoum in the center of Tunisia set a new record high temperature of 50.3 degrees Celsius on Wednesday. Authorities in Tunis said this weather is unprecedented in Tunisia's history. Khartoum is the second hottest place on earth and the hottest spot in Africa. The current heatwave has attracted people's attention to global warming and climate change. The National Institute of Meteorology announced that temperatures are expected to drop gradually during the weekend. Abdel Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
The Masai Mara is by far Kenya's most popular game park and is widely considered one of the greatest game parks on earth. Its main attraction each year has been the Great Wildebeest Migration. CGTN's Robert Nagila takes us along to experience the Mara with him.
Hello? Are you ready? I'm on my way. It is said a visit to the Masai Mara is an unforgettable experience. That's what we want to find out. Now, this is Robert Kingori. Robert, say hi to the viewers. Hi. Now, show me the best of the Mara. Wait. Zebras. Less than 100 meters outside our tented camp, and already zebras all around us. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Look, wildebeest. So these will likely be crossing the Mara River over to Tanzania in the next few weeks.
Now, let me go and show you the big five.
Okay, cool.
Look, it's a small herd of elephants. Such amazing creatures. Beautiful.
Hardly an hour's gone past. We've already seen wildebeest, zebras, elephants.
Here are the giraffes.
It does look like the National Reserve is on fire, but that is a controlled fire. Side to center. All right. Well, so that was quite the game drive. Missed out on buffaloes and rhinos, but as they say here, tomorrow's another day. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Masai Mara, Kenya.
We're not done just yet. We're just getting started. We've got your business segment coming up next. Here's a peek at the headlines. Well, still to come, a look at how the closure of ivory markets in China, the U.S., and the U.K. have impacted elephant numbers in Kenya. And a startup in South Africa helping to address the country's job crisis.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time, it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues for taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. We appreciate your company. I'm Richard Nta. The closure of ivory markets in China, the United States, and the United Kingdom have contributed in a big way to the reduced level of poaching across the African continent. This, coupled with community initiatives, have led to an increase in the number of elephants in many African countries, including Kenya. CGTN's Enoch Sokolia reports.
For the last 1 year, Barry Magonko has been operating hot air balloon flights.
But there are so many projects.
In Amboseli National Park in the southwestern part of Kenya.
Oftentimes the elephants just come through in huge herds through that area.
The COVID-19 pandemic has continued to hamper his business, but he believes the good old days of tourism peak seasons will be back soon. He says for Kenya to fully benefit from the coming post-pandemic era, then animals like elephants of the Amboseli must be protected at all costs.
I'm just a guy here in the community trying to do a good job, build a business, work with our community, but there needs to be an ongoing appreciation for conservation. Without the animals, the tourists will stop coming. You know, people come here because of the animals are plentiful and they want to see a full variety.
He says the loss of elephants due to poaching and human-wildlife conflict could be devastating for the community.
Tourism has been the lifeblood, you know, that's how they survive. Without that money coming in, there's no jobs and they're struggling to take care of their families.
The Amboseli National Park prides itself as being one of the elephant sanctuaries where poaching has really reduced drastically. In the last 3 years, no elephant has fallen due to poaching. This has been attributed to collaborative efforts between players, the native community and the international community. The banning of ivory trade in some US states like New York City, as well as the United Kingdom and the People's Republic of China, has seemingly cut off a significant size of the market, and the impact is being felt on the ground. No one understands this better than Samuel Kanki, a native from Kenya's Masai community, which has been fighting for the rights of elephants.
Now we can stay for about a year or two without losing an elephant due to poaching. The few that we have lost is because of human-wildlife conflict, but poaching has gone down, and it is because of the efforts to cut off the market and efforts here on the ground.
In the wake of China's 2017 ban on the ivory trade, the Worldwide Wildlife Fund, WWF, conducted annual surveys of Chinese consumers and found a promising decline in elephant ivory buying. WWF found out that nearly 80% of respondents interviewed in 2019 supported the ban. The organization also tracked black market activity and found that wholesale prices of ivory had dropped.
When you have elephants, they are your heritage. Say in Masai Mara or in Amboseli or Savo, it means that you can use your heritage to make gainful activities such as tourism. Once they are poached and gone, that opportunity is removed.
In Kenya, the government, through the Kenya Wildlife Service, has embarked on community outreach with the aim of rooting out poachers. Incentives such as the employment of young men and women from communities living around parks and game reserves is on the rise. The logic is they know the poachers, and so it becomes easy to read them out. Enoch Sikolia, CGTN, Amboseli National Park, Kenya.
Africa's agricultural industry is the least mechanized in the world. This presents challenges for farmers who rely on heavy manual labor. In Kenya, for instance, a new startup is looking to make tractors more easily available to farmers. Nick Medema has more.
For many African farmers, owning a tractor is nothing more than a dream. The world's least mechanized continent, farming equipment is unaffordable for most because of low income and a lack of financing. Without machines, production is roughly half the average for the developing world, with farmers unable to grow their businesses. But in some parts of Africa, this is slowly changing thanks to a mobile phone app. It's ride-hailing, but for farmers, Hello Tractor allows them to hire equipment and operators at the touch of a button.
I feed my kids through this farm. I school them through this farm. I feed my cows with Napier grass, all courtesy of this garden. The tractor innovation and technology is very cheap. It's also tiresome to do all this manually, like bush clearing, and the tractor makes the work very easy.
For farmers here in Kenya's Kisii County, this innovation has helped cut production costs while boosting yields. Almost 2/3 of African farmers depend on labor-intensive agriculture, which is time-consuming and doesn't guarantee a successful harvest. But the app has been a game-changer for many of them. As well as helping farmers, the app makes owning a tractor more profitable as the equipment doesn't lie idle.
Kusema ukweli, hali ya uchumi yenyewe sio nzuri, lakini kwa kweli vile tumeanza.
The Hello Tractor has really boosted our economic state in this area. Farmers here harvest quality food, which helps them in so many ways. The app also tracks the movement of tractors, monitors fuel consumption and maintenance, and also allows owners to see who is operating the equipment.
Wanaendelea vizuri, wanalima chakula ambacho ni kizuri,
na kimewasaidia kwa njia nyingi.
The app also tracks the movement of tractors, monitors fuel consumption and maintenance, and allows owners to see who is operating the equipment.
A typical farmer who receives tractor services through us plants 40 times faster than manual labor and at 1/3 the cost. Now, keep in mind, these are mostly rain-fed agricultural systems. So what that means is establishing your crop on time is mission critical for the grower. So being able to get your land prepared, get your crop established before the rain comes will determine the outcome of your season. And so having access to a tractor allows you to do that so you can earn more money come harvest time.
The startup began in Nigeria in 2014 and now operates in 13 African countries, as well as 3 in Asia. 3,000 tractor owners have used the platform to service over 500,000 farmers.
The role of innovation in this area has changed the lives of so many farmers. Through the fertile soils and availability of tractors, the farmers are now able to realize so many profits from the markets. Right now, the main intention is to increase the acreage and, of course, the number of tractors in this area. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Kisii County, Kenya.
The Nigerian government has approved about $1.5 billion for the rehabilitation of 2 of its refineries in Warri and Kaduna. The contract was awarded to Italian oil and gas firms Saipem SPA and Saipem Contracting Limited. Africa's biggest crude oil producer has also approved another $11 billion for the construction of the Lagos-Calabar standard gauge rail line. With that report, here is CGTN's Deji Badmus from Lagos.
The contract award for the rehabilitation of the 2 refineries is coming about 4 months after the government approved the sum of $1.5 billion for similar work on the country's largest refinery in the southern city of Port Harcourt. The 2 refineries have a combined capacity of 210,000 barrels per day. The government says getting them operational would significantly cut down on refined petrol imports. The contract is split in 2.
897,678,800 US dollars for Warri refineries and 586,902,256 US dollars for Kaduna refineries. The completion of the rehabilitation is going to be in 3 phases. First phase is within 21 months. Phase 1 will be completed. In 23 months, phase 2 will be completed. And in 33 months, the full rehabilitation will be completed. The Executive Council also approved the acquisition of 20% minority stakes by the NNPC in Dangote petroleum and petrochemical refineries in the sum of $2.76 billion US dollars.
Nigeria has been committing massive funding to rebuilding its railway network. The government is now committing even more funding with the latest approval of $11 billion for the Lagos-Calabar standard gauge rail line, which will link 12 of the country's 36 states.
This particular route is very important because after the Lagos-Kano route, this Lagos-Calabar coastal route actually will link all the coastal cities in the country. And we have 6 years for the completion of this project.
Just a few weeks ago, President Buhari flagged off the $1.2 billion Kaduna-Kano standard gauge rail line, which is part of the Lagos-Kano rail modernization project. The country is also constructing a rail line to its next-door neighbor, Niger, to facilitate export and import to the landlocked country through the Lagos ports. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
South Africa's jobless rate jumped to a record 32.6% in the first quarter of this year on the back of a prolonged COVID-19 lockdown. It's likely to jump further after the worst protest in years sparked by former President Jacob Zuma's arrest, and that left many businesses looted, destroyed, and burnt to the ground. But there's hope. According to a new World Bank report, young entrepreneurs and startups could be key to solving the problem. CGTN Julie Shire takes a look at a self-startup in Alexandra Township on Grassroots tonight.
Bonani Shikweni lives in Johannesburg's impoverished Alexandra Township. She was determined not to be discouraged by unemployment and started a small home sewing business with her husband's help in 2014.
It pushed me so hard when I look at the youth of Alexandra, no jobs and women suffering. So that's why I created this. Then I called some ladies to start the business, and now it's operating.
Shikweni pushed on with the help of Netcare Hospital Group. Business hit a brief hurdle during the COVID-19 lockdown, but she bounced back up quickly.
We started to make more cloth masks last year. We worked very hard. The first order that we received after the president announced is 10,000 masks for Netcare. Then when we busy started on 10,000 masks for Netcare, then yes, employment services and called me again. They say no. Example, Alex Mall, they want 20,000 masks for Alex shoppers. So we're busy last year.
Hluvuku has since signed a contract to produce hospital supplies. It's moved to bigger premises under the wing of the Presidential Youth Employment Services Initiative. The small business employs 30 young people and trains dozens of others.
If you are young like us, you're going to commit yourself into crime and do wrong things and smoke drugs. So here is better because of you make yourself proud because of you are working and you gain more experience. They started by training me on the machine. I was sewing before, but I pushed myself to learn how to cut the design and drawings.
Recent civil unrest and looting has worsened the crisis. 150,000 more jobs are at risk after thousands of stores and warehouses were destroyed in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal.
So it was a very stressful phase, and it still is right now. Having a job at this time is a great privilege, you know, and having a job that links with whatever that I want to do. My career path is fashion design, so me working here is a great benefit because at some point I'm going to be a shop owner.
The World Bank says not all is lost despite many challenges. Dozens of startups like Hluvuku can help arrest joblessness if the right ecosystem is created for entrepreneurs to thrive. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
China has launched its latest restoration campaign for a key section of the Great Wall. The Jinshaling section is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and hailed as a masterpiece. We head to northern China's Hebei province to take a look.
The part of the Great Wall in Hebei province dates back to nearly 2,000 years ago, with some 6,300 individual buildings and 372 watchtowers.
The Great Wall in Hebei has the longest history, covering 11 historic periods from the Warring States to the Ming Dynasty. It also has the widest area. The length of the Great Wall in Hebei is the second longest in China.
The Jinshanling section of the Great Wall was built in the Ming Dynasty about 500 years ago. It has a length of 10.5 kilometers and 67 watchtowers. A 500-meter-long killing wall is one of the highlights of key archaeological and artistic value.
The Keeling wall is very valuable. It is made of 15 sculpted square bricks. The Keeling is running on the cloud and turning back its head. It is the only such instance of this on the Great Wall.
The Jinshanling Great Wall was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. On June the 1st, a protection regulation was established, and the third round of renovations of the Jinshanling section has begun. 张梦圆 CGTN